Welcome to How to Play Clue. This is going to be a really advanced version of How to Play Clue. I'm going to use all 6 characters and we're going to walk through the game. This is how you win at Clue every single time. If you want to see my other videos on how to play Clue and basic strategy, I highly suggest you do it. But this is going to be an advanced version. And I'm going to just let it play out and talk through it. The reason I'm playing with 6 players too is you might as well have some good competition. And second of all, I think there's a good lesson in how you can learn from other people. Okay, so it looks like my 3 cards are the lounge, the wrench, and the dagger. It looks like Miss Scarlet's going first. We're going second. Okay, so let's watch her go. I always like to say that the information you want to get when you play Clue is never the information when it's your turn, it's the information from other people's turns. So she's just plum, wrench, and ballroom, and what's happened immediately that I don't like is that I have to tell everybody that I have one of those 3 cards. They don't know which, of course, but I just don't like to be the person who gives away those cards, and I've had to. And I also was just saying before that I don't get as much information on my turn as I do from other people's turns. So I can go to any of these rooms. Let's come down here. I don't want to go to the lounge since I have it, and I don't believe in going to a room when you actually have the card if it's not necessary. So let's just start at the top and go to the ballroom. As far as picking suspects, at this point it's wide open, so I might as well start with Mustard. And as far as picking weapons, I also might as well pick something I don't have, candlestick. I'm not a big fan of picking something that I do have, unless I'm specifically going for something. Well, you've got candlestick. Great. At least we now know three of these weapons we can rule out. We didn't get as much information as we'd like on that, but let's just watch other people play, because if this is done properly, we're going to get some really good information. It's Peacock's turn, and she's done the worst thing you can possibly do, which is have a roll so low that you can't even get to a room to make an accusation. That's the worst. At all costs, always try to get to a room. Okay, Plum is heading to a room. What are you going to ask? Peacock, wrench, billiard, and we want to see a lot of people not have things. Okay, Scarlet has a card. We don't know what she showed, but what I do is I put a 1 in her column next to each of the 3 cards that she showed. Peacock, I don't actually have to put it in the wrench column because I know she doesn't have that, and I put it in the billiard room. What it does mean here is she either has that billiard room, which is a 1, or she has that peacock, and I put another 1. So therefore, if I ever learn that she has one of these 2, I can immediately, if I know that she doesn't have one of these 2 later on, I know that she immediately has the other. It's important to know that just because she may not have one, she may have one, she may also have both. Okay, dining room. Let's see what we're going to learn here. Green, revolver, and Orchid has something. So let's go ahead and do the same thing in her column, which we're dealing with the first card. Her first time that she's had to show a card, we put a 1. 1 in the revolver, and 1 in the dining room. Now that's 3 ones. So just because we'll learn that she doesn't have a card, it doesn't mean that we can immediately know what card she does have, but we know she has one of those 3. Now she's going into the study, and let's see what she asks for. Orchid, herself, revolver, and study. And immediately Scarlet has something. So Orchid, revolver, and study. Now notice these were not the same. There's no 1s that I had there before. So basically, we now know she has one of these 3 other cards. So we're going to put a 2 in each of these. Now we know she has one of the 1s and she has one of the 2s. So though we don't know her 3 cards, everybody has 3 cards, that's important to know. Though we don't know her 3 cards, we know between the 6 cards, we know that she has 2 of those. We just need to find out 1 more of those cards, and we're going to have it solved. The library. Mustard, dagger, library. Unfortunately, I have to show my other card. So at this point, Miss Scarlet knows the 2 weapons cards I have. Not my favorite, but what can I do? Okay, so let's go ahead and see what room we can get into. It usually lights up. These are my eligible rooms. I have the lounge. I could go to the lounge to throw people off to get more information. I don't think I'm going to do it at this point. I think I'm going to go to something like the kitchen. I like staying on the corners too if I can, because it allows me on the next turn to always know I can use a secret passage way and never get caught without being able to get to a room. So I want to come back to what we're doing here, because now you can see that we've had people show their in Orchid, Green, and Peacock. These things have come up. And to find out if somebody has that information would be super helpful. So we're going to go with Green, and we're going to go with Revolver, and we're going to just see what happens. Green, and we're going to go with Revolver. And you'll see how if somebody does have it, like they do, kitchen. Oh, well, that didn't actually help that information. Okay, but they have the kitchen. One. Well, where I was going with this is that if somebody had one of those weapons or suspects cards, it would have then allowed us to help the elimination to know what those other cards were. Library. Green. I suppose I should have gone to the lounge since I hadn't. I would have for sure gotten that information. But we now know that Mustard came up with one of these three cards, Green, and this is the first time he showed a card, so I'm going to use a 1 for Green. I don't have to put the 1 for Wrench, and a 1 in the library. So, let's keep going. I'm hoping that each one of these turns teaches us just a little bit about what something doesn't have, so that by the time we get to our turn, we'll have it solved. Ballroom, plum, and immediately he has something. So let's come down here because he has plum, rope, and ballroom. We now can put, this is the second time he's had to show a card, and it's going to allow, so I'm putting 2s, but it's allowing us to know 2s. We now know of 6 cards, we know what 2, he has 2 of them, which would be good information to know. If we could know one more card of his, we could then eliminate all the other choices because we'll know the 3 cards we're dealing with. In the study, there's plum, revolver, and let's see. Not a lot of people had that, which is good information. But Peacock, plum, revolver, and study. We know she has one of those 3 cards. So this is going to be helpful. Watch this. So we'll put the 1 since it's the first time she's had to show a card. I'll put a 1 at the revolver since that's the first time she's had to show a card. We're going to put 1 at the study since that's the first time she's going to show a card. But look here at the study. See, now there's a 2 with an X crossed off. And if you look at the revolver, there's a 2 with an X crossed off. So we actually also know that if we want to go back earlier when Scarlet showed a card, she showed Orchid, because that's where the other 2 is. I'm just going to remove those 2s, just because I don't want to be confused. I'm going to remove those 2. But come back here now to that 1. That revolver that Miss Orchid has, she has a 1 there, but that 1 could have been green, and it could have been dining room. So we're going to take the 1 off there, but now we know that she either has the dining room or she has green. Make sense? Let's keep going. And also on this game, you see how there's a big X on that line of Orchid versus the little X's? A big X means I have the knowledge that those people, that person doesn't have the card, and without anyone having exposed that card through the process of having to show a card. All right, so again, I have to show a wrench, and this time I'm showing it to Orchid. But what's interesting is Plum had to expose that she did not have the library. I'm sorry, Scarlet had to expose that she did not have the library. Now it's Scarlet's turn again. So far, in both of her turns, she's had 2 turns, and I've had to show her 2 cards. And she's going to the lounge, which is amazing because I'm about to show her my 3rd card. Okay. Well, Scarlet, well played. All 3 times you have guessed something, and I've had the card. So Scarlet knows every card I have. Not my favorite, but what are you going to do? So let's see here. What I want to start to do is I want to start to eliminate more than just one turn. So look at sort of this billiard. There's a one on that billiard, and there's a one on that peacock. Why don't we go to the billiard room? And if we learn that somebody does or doesn't have it, that Scarlet does or doesn't have it, it'll answer us about the peacock card. We're also able to maybe, I think, guess green and maybe rope. Actually, maybe I want to try something different. Let's try the lead pipe. I just feel like going for something that no one's asked about yet. Just to see what comes up. Okay, so what did we learn here? Green. So we can see already green. We'll get to that in a second. Lead pipe, 3 people didn't have it. And billiard room, we didn't get to the information. But we did learn something here because we now know green had, if you look at the check mark under orchid, that green check mark, 1, we knew she was either one or the other. We can take those ones off. Now, I'm not going ahead and saying she doesn't have the dining room just yet because truthfully, she could have had both. But if you come here to green, that's now an X there. And we already know that it was either between that one there was the library. So now that we know that Mustard didn't have green when they showed that card, we know that Mustard now had library. So we can cross that out. So we're starting to get more than one information on a turn, which I like. We're down to still 4 rooms, and we're down to 3 weapons, although we're starting to circle them. The rooms is just going to be a little bit of a crapshoot. Hall, green, candlestick, and immediately they have a card. So let's go ahead and we know he didn't have green. We know he did have candlestick, so that's probably what he showed. We can't go ahead and make any assumption that he did or didn't have Hall because he had the candlestick card, and most likely that's what he showed. So Plum's turn, he picks Hall, Mustard, and Dagger, and let's see who has what. Orchid does, but let's come back here because we can now put some numbers with her. We know one card, she has green, but this is her first time where we can put back a 1 because she either has Mustard, she doesn't have the Dagger, or she has the Hall. So I'm going to put a 1 and 1 there. And now that we know that, we already know one of her cards. We know her second card is going to be one of those two. If we could just get one more card from her, we'll be able to call her finished. Mustard's turn, going all the way to the kitchen. Scarlet Dagger, kitchen. And I have to show my dagger. I'm just showing it to everybody. So Scarlet, 2, Dagger, I had, and kitchen, more people than I have. We are starting to figure out people's cards, which I like. I always like to see, like, how many cards do I know on the board? And right now I know for sure everybody's 1 card, and it looks like we have possibilities of everybody's second cards. Too bad you didn't get a higher roll. That's why you should stay in the corner. Okay, to the ballroom. Scarlet, you know my card. Okay, so Peacock, Revolver, Ballroom. Peacock, we know Mr. Mustard didn't have that because there's an X. Revolver, well, it's possible he had that. And Ballroom, it's possible he had that. In fact, we have a 2 there. So here's what I usually do. I'm actually going to employ another trick I learned, which is I'm going to put a 3. So this is her third thing. Now, I'm not going to put it on Peacock since we know he didn't have it. But he either showed the Revolver, so I put a 3, or the Ballroom, so I'm going to put a 3. Now, notice there's another 2 there. What that means is most likely he probably showed the Ballroom card, but since we don't know, we don't know. Let's also come down back to the Peacock, who has a 1 on Plum, a 1 on the Revolver, and a 1 on the Study. Now we know we can take off the Revolver because she doesn't have it. One more thing about this moving forward is that most likely that Revolver is the weapon. because almost everybody is saying they don't have it. It's our turn again. Okay, so what room would we like to go to this time? How about the hall? Wait, what are my other choices? Well, I don't want to go to a room. Let's go to the hall. And the reason I want to go to the hall is I'm going to hope nobody has it. And I'm absolutely going to ask about that revolver. And as far as other things, let's ask about Peacock. So Peacock. Revolver. Let's see what happens. Hall. Well, we did learn a few things that's important before we move ahead, which is nobody has a revolver. See that 3? So we can take off that 3. And we can take off that 3. Oops, I'm sorry. I meant we can give him that 3 because we now know he didn't have that, so he must have that. So we can take off that 3. And we also now know that that was his, oops. We also now know that was his 2 card. So we can take the 2s off because we have figured out which of those 2s he had. We now can look at Mustard and go, all right, we know 2 of his cards. We just don't know the 3rd. Now the Hall, she had, there's a 1 there. And so therefore we can take that off. We can't, however, assume that she doesn't have Mustard. It's possible that she had both. So all we can do there is just say, okay, we figured out Hall and we figured out that the revolver is indeed that. So we're not going to be able to finish. But it does mean that we know for sure that someone has this lead pipe. So it's either got to be Orchid. And if you look, the fact that we know 2 of their other cards, most likely. Okay, let's go. Got a lot of people not be able to actually get to a room. I have the lounge, so plum, lead pipe, let's see if it comes up with anything. Okay, so we know she has either plum, which we have an X, so we know she didn't have it. Therefore, and we know she doesn't have lounge, because I have it, so therefore Scarlet absolutely has this lead pipe. And if we want to just look here, we now know 1, 2. We also know that there's a 1 here with Peacock, and there's a 1 here with Ballroom. We know she's got one of those 2 cards, but it means that we also know she doesn't have any other cards, because everyone only has 3 cards. So we're just going to go ahead and cross off those extra cards. I would love to know if she has Peacock, because if not, then we know it is definitely Peacock. Someone please ask Miss Peacock. Yes, I want to see if Scarlet can show Peacock. She cannot. Great. Uh-oh. So because she can't show Peacock, she doesn't have that 1, which means we know for sure she has that 1. So let's take the 1s off. So we now know all 3 of Miss Peacock's cards. But we do have a problem here, which is now that we know Peacock doesn't have, nobody has the Peacock card, we also know everybody at the table also knows that Peacock is the suspect. And we see now that Revolver is it. We know everyone else knows it. Now you see here this rope? We now know he has to have this rope. And the reason is because if Revolver's the card, somebody has to have it, and everyone else said they didn't. So now we can go down here and we can say, when it comes to Mr. Mustard, we know he doesn't have any other card because we already know his 3 cards. He has a rope. We can cross off dining room. And we can cross off that. So now we also know that the winner is the dining room. So we've got it all figured out. We do have a bit of a problem, though, which is that Mustard now knows officially that's Revolver and Peacock. And since he knows he doesn't have the dining room card, he's won. And as soon as I hit continue, he is going to guess those 3 cards. He is going to say Peacock, Revolver, and dining room and win. Yep. So we figured it out, but unfortunately, we figured it out slightly. obviously would have won if we could have just got our turn.